Hey y'all, welcome to the Rabbit Barn. I want to talk to you guys today about the lessons that we have learned after a year of breeding and raising meat rabbits. It's been a little over a year since we brought home our first group of meat rabbits to this homestead. We had some meat rabbits in our apartment, and then before that even we've had meat rabbits at our old homestead in Florida. But as far as a year of actual productive meat rabbits, the whole process, you know, breeding to processing, we've done the most of that here on this homestead. It was about a year ago we brought home our first group of rabbits, and it really wasn't ideal. The rabbits we started out with was a group of 4, and it was 3 males and 1 female. Of those males, one of them was really small, and so I knew I wouldn't want to breed him, so I went ahead and processed him. And then the other 2 males actually were really unfortunate. They were beautiful, but they both had some injuries to their parts, and so they were both completely sterile, and we ended up having to euthanize both of those just out of like being nice. So we were definitely off to a really rocky start, to say the least. We did keep that female. We bred her a couple of times. She was a great mom. She actually fostered some babies from a different mom at one point. I'll link that video everywhere. She was a great doe, but unfortunately she was really small, and so I didn't really want to keep her in our breeding program long term. So recently she actually did move to another farm. So now on to things that I would change. There's really just 2 things that I would change about getting started. The first being, if it was me starting over or like telling a beginner you know, some advice, I would say wait and hold out on finding really good quality animals. We bought animals that were older, and so they weren't able to produce for us as long. We also bought animals that I didn't know how to check over them very well, and so when we got home, found out some of them were gravely injured or had some other issues going on. So unfortunately, having gotten injured and sick animals, we did learn a lot, as Jerry pointed out when I was talking to him about this. And so that was good. We got the knowledge right off the bat, but telling a beginner on like how to get started, I definitely would hold out and find really good quality animals. And actually, if you're thinking about getting into meat rabbits, I do have a video talking about how to choose quality breeding stock, and I'll link it down in the description. Now, the second thing, and Jerry definitely agrees with me on this one, is that we would have waited to get our rabbits until we were actually set up for them. When we brought home those first 4 rabbits, we had cages. However, we didn't have any structure to put them in for, you know, at least a couple of days. And then we did set something up that was much more like the boys over here, where it just has a piece of metal on top for a roof, and it worked, obviously, but it wasn't great, and it made things a little bit more stressful, and we didn't get to set up the way I really would have liked to. Definitely would have been more prepared before we actually brought something to the farm. Now, after breeding and raising rabbits for a year, some things I would change about my breeding situation is, number 1, I would not have bred as late in the year as we did this time. It just got too hot, and unfortunately it was really hard on the does. Like, they were panting throughout their pregnancies, which, as a pregnant person, like, yeah, I didn't like being pregnant in the summer either, so I get it. Won't be doing that again. We also lost a lot of babies just from them overheating, being in the nest box. It really just wasn't ideal, and so this year I'll probably have my last breeding in March, and then that way they'll have babies in April, and then they should be fine. That should be good. Another thing that we would have done raising wise is that we would have set up our grow out pens a lot sooner. We didn't have them set up for the first, definitely the first 2 litters of babies that we had. We didn't have the grow out pens all ready to go. So would have done that, had it done earlier. It's done now for the most part. We need to set up a situation like we have for these bucks. But the pens are built. It's just putting them on a frame and putting the roof on. The next thing that I would change, and this is mostly for being frugal, we, this year, will definitely process our rabbits on a schedule. Last year we kind of let it get away from us a couple of times. Sometimes they were 16 weeks by the time we were processing them. And really after the 12-week mark, you're starting to lose money because you're feeding them more than they're gaining. So this year, right when they hit 10 weeks, we'll be processing that weekend. The plan is also to make sure our genetics are up to par so that they're hitting the right weight by then. But even if they don't, they're going to freezer camp just because that's the most frugal time for us to stop feeding them. So the next thing is a little different, but it does tie back in. I got a question on Instagram from Wild Sunflower Goddess asking about keeping the rabbits' feet good when they're on wire, because a lot of people talk about how wire can really hurt their feet, which is very true if you're not using the proper wire. Another thing to consider is that if you are using the proper wire and their feet are still getting sore, it actually has to do with their genetics. If their feet just don't hold as much fur, or if the padding on them is not as thick, then they are more prone to having sore hocks, which is an issue. And so if at all possible, I try to avoid breeding rabbits who have that issue. So we haven't actually had a sore hocks issue here on our farm, not this time, but on our previous homestead, we did have that issue. And so I did a lot of research about the gauge of wire and like, what should I do? And that's when I found out about the genetics as well as using proper wire. So you do those things, you're most likely gonna be fine. If it bothers you, feel free to put a piece of tile in there or even some cardboard. That's what a lot of farms do. It's just not really necessary for our rabbits and they don't seem to mind. Well, hi guys. What are y'all doing? Just y'all coming to hang out with me while I film? Okay. The last thing, and this isn't really something I would change as much as something I would do earlier, is build this watering system. It is a pressurized watering system, which means we hook it up to a water hose and I don't have to fill little water bottles. Especially being down here in South Georgia where it gets very, very hot in the summer. Having those little like 32-ounce water bottles doesn't work. You'd have to come out like 3 or 4 times a day to refill them, especially if you have babies or like grow outs. It's a lot. And then they like grow mold, or not mold, but like algae. And while the tubing right up against the cages does grow a little bit of algae, they're really easy to clean out. We just take them apart, shoot some high pressure water through them, and they're fine. The system we had before this was a gravity fed system, and it was hooked up to a 5-gallon bucket, and that was awesome. Did take a little bit more work. You do have to clean out the bucket and all of that stuff, which isn't that big of a deal. If you have a homestead or a farm or really animals of any kind, you're used to having to do some kind of labor. But having this pressurized system means I just come out and make sure that all of the nipples, the watering nipples, are working, and I'm done. Like, that's all I have to do. So that really seems like a lot, but hopefully you're able to take from the wisdom we have acquired the hard way and, you know, not have to do things the hard way. Learn from my mistakes so that you don't have to do it yourself. If you would like to watch our meat rabbit story from the very beginning on this homestead, I'll link the playlist in the description and up above, just so you can see things from the very beginning. If you enjoyed watching today's video, if you feel like you learned something, please consider liking, sharing, or commenting down below. This just means that YouTube is gonna think this is a good video and that it should show it to other people. So it's a really easy way to help support us, if you feel like it. If you would like to do a little bit more than that, you can commit to us by subscribing and hitting the notification bell so that you're getting a pop-up on your phone or your computer or whatever whenever we put out a new video, so you don't miss anything new. If you would like to get to know us on a little bit more personal of a level and see things as they're happening, like how over the weekend we moved our rabbit barn, you can check us out on Instagram, because I post on our stories pretty much every day. All right, well, if you stuck around this long in the video, thank you for watching and hanging out with me today. Until we meet again, bye y'all.